Hey guys, so I've been lucky enough to have been given the opportunity to test out Jane Doe on the Creator Experience server over the past few weeks, and from that I've put in over 30 hours testing out Jane Doe to bring you this guide. We'll cover all of her kit and gameplay mechanics here, and I've also got a separate video that goes more in depth on her team loadouts where we compare a bunch of her teams available to you once she goes live on the servers. So I'll leave a link to that down below if you want to check that out. So Jane is our second 5-star anomaly unit, and she's a physical type anomaly character, so she'll be dishing out assault procs which results in massive physical damage numbers. What sets Jane apart from our other anomaly options is that unlike Grace, who is played more in a disorder swap team, or Piper, who comes in to spend her EX meter before being swapped out, Jane is designed to be on-fielded for long periods of time, dishing out multiple rapid bursts of assault damage. She plays almost like a Nikamata in that she's super agile and really dodge focused, and while her optimal playstyle is not really designed to be quick swapped, she's really easy to build around and she can still fit in your standard Grace disorder team if that's what you play, replacing Piper, or played as a hyper carry assault DPS. So let's take a look at her kit. So first, let's take a look at Jane's core skill. The unique thing about Jane as an anomaly unit is that she's able to make her assault procs crit, though that doesn't mean that she's a crit based character. Jane's assault crit has a base crit rate of 40%, and this increases by 0.16% for every point of anomaly proficiency that she has at max core skill. So this means that you can hit 100% crit rate at 375 anomaly proficiency. The crit damage of this is at a static 50% and cannot increase outside of Mindscapes. She gets no additional crit rate or crit damage from substats, so you don't want to focus on those stats. Her team passive is triggered when you pair her with another unit of the same type or the same faction, and it provides her with an additional 20% physical anomaly build-up rate, and then an additional 15% build-up rate if the enemy is already suffering from an attribute anomaly. It goes without saying that this is incredibly important to have active, so you definitely want to make sure that you pair her with the right teammates to ensure that you have this. Next up, let's take a look at her basics, and along with that, the unique mechanic that is tied to Jane. So Jane has this meter under her health bar called a passion meter, and it fills up whenever you deal damage or perform a dodge or defensive assist. It's pretty easy to fill up, charging to full in about 1.5 basic combos, and if you're supplementing that with some dodge counters, you can usually fill it up quite quickly. Defensive assisting into Jane is going to be the fastest way of getting this meter up, however, since Jane racks up almost 90% of her bar from a single defensive assist follow-up. You can also fill up this meter by using EX skills outside of the passion state, as this also gives you about 45% of your meter. So once you're in the passion state, the aim of the game is to stay in the passion state. While inside this state, Jane gets a massive 25% anomaly build-up rate, along with 2 attack for every point of anomaly proficiency that she has, exceeding 120 points, with a cap of 600 attack. So that's a breakpoint of 420 anomaly proficiency in order to hit that 600 bonus attack. So when in this state, most of Jane's damage attacks will now start draining this meter, such as both her basics and her EX specials. Her dodges, however, will instead give you back a significant amount of charge, and it's going to be through this that we're going to be keeping ourselves in the passion state for as long as we can. It's far more efficient to stay inside the passion state than it is to leave the passion state and reaccumulate that meter again. In fact, you get a significant DPS loss whenever you fall out of this state. So sometimes when you're low on charge, it's actually better to wait for a second for a dodge counter than it is to continue attacking and risking dropping out of the passion state. You also notice here that once we get into the passion state, next to the meter there is a circular counter. So this counter here signifies that we've got 1 charge of the Salcho jump attack, and this is a special attack that is performed when you press and hold the attack button, and it puts Jane into the special spinning attack, similar to Piper's spin to win move. Just like Piper, Jane also gets a 40% damage reduction while doing the spin, so you are able to tank some hits during your spin. But the main use for this attack is that it's one of the few moves that will actually regenerate your passion meter as you use it. Now, this special attack is available to you both in and outside of the passion state, so you can use it to either prolong your passion state while already inside of it, or you can use it outside of the passion state to build up your meter to get back into the passion state. It is, however, highly advised that you do use it while inside the passion state to make use of the bonus damage and anomaly build-up rate, while also extending your passion state duration. Obviously, this does mean that you don't want to use it when your meter is already full, and because the Salcho jump regenerates about 1/3 of your meter for its full duration, you want to make sure that you have at least that much missing from your meter before you use it to make the most out of the recharge. Here I'll show you how easy it is to remain in the passion state indefinitely against an aggressive enemy like a Fabuari, you'll notice here that as I get lower in my meter, I actually slow down my attacks and wait for attacks so that I can dodge counter, just to ensure that I don't accidentally drop out of the passion state too early. Obviously, for slower enemies or enemies that just aren't as aggressive, you might find it a little bit harder to stay in the passion state, but I did find that most endgame bosses were fine for keeping me topped up indefinitely, while most smaller enemies that aren't as aggressive would just simply die before I run into that issue. Jane's special attacks compared to her basics are much simpler. Her special has her do a spinning slash attack in the air, and there's really not that much more to add to that we haven't already covered earlier. It's got very long iframes, just like most other EX moves in the game, and outside of Passion State, the EX special regenerates about 45% of your Passion meter, and while inside the Passion State, it drains about 25% of your meter per cast. Ideally, you do want to be using it inside of the Passion State for more damage and anomaly build-up, but it can work as an emergency top-up for your Passion meter outside of the Passion State to quickly get you back in. Now, Jane's dodge attack on the other hand is a little bit more interesting. Most characters in the game are able to do 2 dodges in a row, and this lets you move out of the way of rapid attacks, or it gives you a little bit of a margin of error for executing dodges a little bit too early. Jane on the other hand has an additional dodge for a total of 3 back-to-back dodges. So this plays into her gameplay style of being a dodge focused character, making it easier to rack up those dodges to keep you inside the Passion State. While inside of Passion State, Jane also gets an upgraded dodge which has her teleport around. This dodge can actually phase through enemies, so you can quickly reposition to any point on the map without bumping into enemies. The one strange thing that I did notice was that Jane's kit does make a point to call out single dodges versus double dodge attacks, with each dodge counter type having its own unique motion value. However, when you look at the motion values on both of these dodges, they're identical. So other than just being different animations, I don't really feel as though it really matters. I tried testing out the hitboxes on each of these dodge counters too, but if there was a difference, then it's either very minor or pretty much identical. With Jane's assist moves, there's really only one worth talking about, and I did mention it earlier in that Jane's defensive assist is really good for building passion meter. When outside of the passion state, defensive assisting Jane in and then using her follow-up attack, you regenerate almost all of your passion meter, bringing you into the passion state really quickly. Now, there's a reason for this, and it plays into Jane's best in slot team comp, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And now finally, we've got Jane's ultimate. So this ultimate is really good, and in a Jane team you definitely be wanting to use it, but there are some things that you want to keep in mind when you do use it. So other than dealing a bunch of damage and anomaly build-up, the ultimate resets your passion meter to full and refreshes your Salcho jump meter as well. So it's best used when you're either low meter with no charge, or you've accidentally dropped out of the passion state. One thing you do want to keep in mind though is that the anomaly build-up that you get from the ultimate doesn't trigger assault mid-attack. And so if you fill up the assault meter during the middle of the attack, the assault won't proc until the end of the ultimate. And because anomaly meters can't overcap, what this means is that if your enemy is already sitting at 99% anomaly build-up, using this ultimate will fill up that missing 1%, but all of that overflow anomaly is wasted. So you want to make sure that when you're using this, the enemy's anomaly meter isn't already filled up so that you can make the most of it. Because the ultimate pretty much guarantees an assault proc, ideally you want to pop it right after you get an assault proc so that you can chain it with a second assault proc. Okay, so in terms of Jane's teams and playstyles, this will be a condensed version since I have a deeper breakdown and comparison in another video. But the short of it is that while Jane's best in slot team is currently unavailable to us right now, she functions pretty well in a range of teams with kill time spreads of less than 10 seconds across the teams, so she's fairly flexible. The thing with Jane is that she's clearly designed to be an on-field hog that dishes out a bunch of fast assault procs. Her best pairing on paper is Seth, who works very well in this playstyle because of his back assist mechanic, which creates a dynamic in which Jane defensive assists Seth in, who buffs her anomaly build-up rate, and then he swaps back into her. This also provides her with a shield so she can tank hits during her spin attack, which is really useful against enemies with really powerful attacks such as the new Rampant Brute enemy who deals upwards of 4000 damage per attack. So this ping-ponging mechanic is really nice to play, but it puts that third slot into this really awkward position in which they feel like a third wheel to the Jane and Seth pairing. So it's clear here that the third slot is actually for a future character, someone who's able to apply anomaly attacks of a different element while off-field. This would allow Jane to stay on-field, dishing out not only assault procs, but also disorder procs. The fact that Jane gets 90% of her passion meter when being defensive assisted in means that the ideal lineup would have this character in slot 1 with Jane and Seth in slots 2 and 3. But that's all speculation right now, so let's wind it back to the present. Who does Jane pair with right now? So I did a range of tests with a whole bunch of teams, and while there were some standout winners, I want to preface it with this. The difference between each team is so low that what really matters is who you already have invested into and what is available to you. From my test of about 120 runs, My best all-around performing team in Chibi defense is Jane, Seth and Lucy, with Jane, Grace and Rena coming in just behind. For shorter fights that end in a single stun, Jane, Chingy and Rena did the best, but they do fall off once the fight gets prolonged. That said though, all teams were within 5 to 10 seconds of each other, and every team had fluctuations depending on how the AI chose to behave. If you want to see more testing videos, I'll have another video that talks more deeply about it, and I'll have it linked down below. In terms of disc drives, Jane's best set is going to be Fanged Metal. I actually prefer it over Freedom Blues because Jane already builds Anomaly up so fast, and even more so if you own her signature engine or when you pair her with Seth. The rate at which she's able to trigger Assault means that she's able to keep up the Fanged Metal buff 100% of the time against most aggressive fights. Her best 2-piece set is then going to be Freedom Blues for the Anomaly proficiency, but she can just as well use Puffer Electro for the pen ratio. This is especially true if you're running her with Arena, or she can run with Hormone Punk for the attack. In terms of stats and substats, Jane is an Anomaly DPS and doesn't care at all for crit stats. She wants Anomaly proficiency on her 4th slot and Anomaly mastery on her 6th. Her 5th disc is flexible in that you can go with physical damage, attack percentage or penetration ratio, so I would just go with whatever you've got the best substats in. The only thing to keep in mind is that if you're running her with Arena, then you're going to get a little bit more out of the penetration ratio, and if you're running with attack buffers like Lucy or Sokaku, then you get more out of the physical damage instead. In terms of substats, we're looking for Anomaly proficiency and attack percentage, and the best flat stats will be flat attack and flat penetration. For her engines, Jane's signature is hands down her best option. It gives her 90 Anomaly proficiency and a passive that grants 12% physical damage for every dash attack that she performs, stacking up to 3 times. And then once she's sitting on maximum stacks, she'll get another 40% Anomaly build-up rate. Her other 5-star options is going to be Grace's engine, Fusion Compiler. You likely won't be able to keep this passive maxed out due to Jane's 60 energy cost, and the fact is it just doesn't synergize that well with her playstyle. But the fact that it has S rank stats means that it's just a little bit better than your A rank options. For A rank options, the Battle Pass engine Electro Lip Gloss is a solid option, with its passive easily having full uptime with the rate at which you're triggering Anomaly with Jane. Assault procs do leave a flinch debuff on enemies, which will in turn keep this passive up. Aside from that, you do have the option of running Rainforest Gourmet, which provides a solid 75% Anomaly proficiency. This helps you hit your Anomaly breakpoints for your crit and attack bonuses. With Jane's EX skill costing 60 energy, you get 6 stacks each time you use your EX skill. Or for longer boss fights, you do have the option of running Weeping Gemini, which should win out with a stacking Anomaly buff that goes as high as 184 additional Anomaly proficiency after 4 Anomaly procs, with the caveat however that this buff does expire after the enemy recovers from a stun or is defeated. And now lastly, let's say you're really liking Jane and you really want to max her out. So let's take a look at her Mindscapes. I usually do a deep dive into Mindscapes in a separate video where we can really showcase the difference in power through testing, so here we'll just run through it really quickly. Her M1 gives her 1 extra charge of her South Show jump, so if you were really struggling to stay in the passion state before, with an extra charge it's going to be much easier. With 1 charge giving back about 1/3 of the meter, 2 charges gives you essentially another free 2/3 of your meter. Not only that, it also gives Jane an extra 15% Anomaly build-up rate when inside the passion state, along with 0.1 damage per point of Anomaly proficiency, up to a maximum of 30%. So that's a breakpoint of 300 Anomaly proficiency, which should be pretty easy to hit. Her M2 gives Jane 15% defense ignore whenever she attacks an enemy in the Nord state, so this was just a state that gets applied after your first assault proc. With an on-field Jane, you'll pretty much have no issues keeping this up. Additionally, it also bumps your crit damage up by 50%, bringing it to 100% crit damage. So this is the only way to increase Jane's assault crit damage other than pushing for M6, so it's a really nice damage boost. M2 is a nice stopping point for those of you who want to get some serious damage numbers from Jane. Jane's M4 is going to prop up her team damage, and it's going to be really nice once Jane's best team becomes a thing. It gives your entire team an 18% Anomaly damage bonus for 15 seconds whenever you trigger an assault or disorder, which in a Jane comp is going to be pretty much 100% uptime. And then finally we've got Jane's M6. It gives you 20% crit rate bonus and 40% crit damage bonus, and whenever anyone triggers assault, Jane's going to enter the passion state, which is just a long-winded way of saying, hey, you've got permanent passion state now. On top of this, whenever you land a crit assault, which at M6 is going to be all the time, you're also going to be dealing an additional bonus damage equal to 1600% of your Anomaly proficiency. So if you guys want to see how this translates to real world situations, check out my Mindscape deep dive. Alrighty, so that's Jane Doe, our first on-field hypercarry assault DPS. If you're after a second team, she's going to be an amazing pickup for you, especially since she's got Seth on her banner, who is just an amazing support for her. Pulling on this banner nets you 2 characters for your Jane team, giving you some flexibility on who you want to slot into that final slot. Let me know if you plan on pulling for Jane, or if you've got any questions, then you can drop it down in the comments. Laters!